I'm Eric Wolf, and my experience in business peer groups has changed my life, especially my membership in Vistage, one of the world's largest CEO advisory groups. I'm an entrepreneur, a business owner, and a Vistage speaker on the power of marketing. This podcast is dedicated to the people who make those experiences possible, the peer group chairs. Every episode, I interview a Vistage chair who has dedicated their time to helping entrepreneurs like me succeed. Welcome to Chairwaves. My guest from the beautiful city of Atlanta, Georgia, the ATL, Meredith Jolly. And you came to Vistage primarily through a technology background.
That's right.
What were you thinking that your career was going to be like when you got started? What was your goal when you hit the ground running as a young professional versus what actually happened?
Well, since I was 18 years old, I knew I wanted to be a CEO. So I definitely had that dream and that goal. As I entered college, and I went to college near you, actually, you just shared you went to Emory as we were preparing, and I went to Agnes Scott College. And
Oh, wow. Very cool.
yeah, we were neighbors basically. And so while I was at Agnes Scott College, I was, paying my way through school. So I was always at the career planning and placement office looking for extra work. And I found a secretary role that was part-time and started working at that. And through a course of years became CEO of, it was actually a startup company at the time I started with it, became a partner, became CEO, and also became introduced to Vistage through that trajectory. As I was part of the succession plan for the owner founder.
So you literally started at the lowest job at a startup, which by the way, typically the lowest job, there's usually only a handful of people that work at a startup. And so, when you're at the bottom, you're really out the bottom because a lot of other people are founders and things like that. And you worked yourself all the way to the top of the organization. How long did that take you?
20 years.
That's a heck of an investment.
I had a few sabbaticals, as we called them, where I, left the company and came back. All of those were, I think it's easy for us to say as we get older and look back. At the time, it was a big change to leave. It was I went to the competition at one point, and that was huge, in our little world. But now looking back, it was exactly what I needed to do at that time. It was the kind of knowledge I needed about how different companies run and things like that. So
sure.
And that was a big part. The owner founder, knew that I was very well versed in our industry, which was fintech, and our company, our clients, our employees, all of that good stuff. I had that down pat. But as he was thinking about putting me in charge, as he stepped away from the day to day, he wanted me to have exposure to how different companies think and learn. And he got introduced to Vistage, and so he put me in a Vistage group.
And were you in a CE group?
At that time, I was in a key group.
Key group?
I was in a key group, and he was in the CE group.
Gotcha.
And that worked really, really well because I was able to give some feedback sort of via my chair that could get tempered in a way. So it was pretty interesting. And I'm looking forward to creating, I have a CE group right now with Bill Black. We're co-chairs. And one of the next things that I'll be doing is starting a CE group, starting a key group actually.
it's a cool way to work, and yeah, having, because a lot of times when you're in that situation, you don't have somebody who can help uh, play messenger in things that could otherwise be emotional. The sharing a Vistage chair is probably a really unique way to get additional perspective on your boss, and also probably have better communications.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the reality is exactly what we say in Vistage, in that it's an unbiased view when you come to the group, right? So in my case, I was, for a little bit, I was COO before I became CEO. And so in that case, I had people around me, my group, I still to this day think they are the most, brilliant people, and super supportive. And I stay in touch with all of them. And, they were able to give me different perspectives that were about my own personal growth as well as the company's growth. So, my CEO obviously had an agenda of his own. And it's just like, even in my CE group, I have members that are president CEOs for private equity backed firms, or they might have a board, things like
Right.
that. So there's still somebody that they're kind of answering to in a way. And those other people, or if they have a partner in their business or it's family owned, there's all these different entities. But in the Vistage group is where you have this almost sanctity of, it's the bias is only for you. It's only for
Right.
your own growth and for your, and how the company does under your leadership. And that was really interesting for me, and part of why I fell in love with Vistage.
You've got an experience that would have been a lot more common in like our parents' generation, but is very not common now, being that you spent about 20 years working in the same business and
Mm-hmm.
doing many jobs within that business, and it's no longer our culture, um, that we stay with companies for that long. The idea that you're going to get the gold watch really doesn't exist in the same way as it did.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think you gained by being at the same company for 20 years, and is there anything that you feel like you missed being so professionally monogamous, as it were?
Well, after I did sell, so the owner founder exited, and kind of the day to day, and as his health failed, I did facilitate us selling that company, and then ran another software company. So before I became a Vistage chair, I had some other experiences as well. But like you said, the 20 years in one company definitely shaped me. I think
Yeah.
what I the value that I got from it, or certainly how it applies in my life today as a Vistage chair, or maybe just in my life in general, is that I did get to see the value of a small business from conception through growth, through exit, and understand, like, one of the things that when I talk with prospective members or existing members, when they are getting to that exit point of, the people are important. It's not a big corporation who's doing a merger or acquisition. This is
Right.
something that a man or a woman started potentially in their, the proverbial kitchen or garage, and grew to where they take it very seriously that they have mouths to feed. that they, that they have people working for them and they know their families and they know that they just bought a house because of a company that they built. And so when they're ready to exit, that's very important. And I got to live that all the way through. And I think that's really, really beautiful. And I even get to see where people who were in our company and were sort of blocked from growth were able to grow further once we were acquired by a much larger firm. So that's been pretty cool. I don't know. I'd have to really reflect on what did I miss, because I I definitely treasure and feel like it's a gift of what I found, oddly enough, in a career planning and placement office, so many years ago. But I found a mentor who saw in me that a, a desire, like the strong desire for growth personally and professionally, and someone who was willing to nurture that in me. And so I don't think I want for much from that
It,
experience.
it's a tremendous gift to get at such a young age.
Yes, yes, for sure.
So how did you come back to Vistage? What made you ultimately say, okay, my next step is that I'm going to be a chair?
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting, because once I sold the company that I was running, that I'd been at forever, um, I did entertain the idea of becoming a Vistage chair then. So this was probably a good almost 15 years ago.
Okay.
Maybe I might be getting, I don't know,
And how
time.
long had you been a member?
I was a member for 5 years.
Okay.
And I was very much I'm very well connected still to this day to my chair, Tim Fulton, who is still a chair, and he's also a speaker with Vistage. And so he had really encouraged me to be a chair at that point, but I was a single mom with a son in college that I was paying for. And so, this idea of getting a steady paycheck was real fun to me, because I'm sure since you do these podcasts, that it's not an easy thing to build a group, and
No, it is
it
not.
takes a hot minute and a lot of courage to get through it. So I
Many
knew
chairs
that.
say it's the hardest thing they ever did was building their first group. And these are people who started and sold businesses, who served in the military, who were professional executives, and all of that pressure. And many people have told me that the hardest thing that they ever did, not just in their career but in their lives, was building their first Vistage group.
I would give that a big amen. It is not for the faint of heart, for sure. Um, and I sort of knew that at that time, and I had the opportunity to become a CEO of another software company that was owned by private equity, and so I took that opportunity. It was a big turnaround situation, and which I now know much better prepared me to be a Vistage chair. Seeing, a situation where an owner founder had sold to private equity, the promises that he had made to his staff, blah, 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 like lots of different things. And it was a hot mess. And so I was able to come in and turn it around, and then also sold that company to a UK based firm. So a couple of different exits that look differently. And I think that helps with my members when I talk with them today about their long-term exit plans. And so really that's when in that stage, I had followed my husband out west, not to Colorado where you are now, but we were in Montana and then Oregon.
Okay.
And I was quite homesick to get back to Atlanta. And so I actually, I'm definitely at the give back stage of my career. And so I thought I would do that in nonprofit. And I found that, I'm not one to be camping unless it's really glamping. So I decided I would just be the person who writes the checks for nonprofit
Okay.
and just not necessarily work in nonprofit. But I talked again with my chair, and he said, "I've been telling you you should be a Vistage chair." And then I had a conversation with my son, who is very entrepreneurial. He had to be growing up with me. And I said, what do you think about me being a Vistage chair? And he said, Mom, it was always your favorite day of the month. Of course, you should be a Vistage chair. And that's what made me make the decision. This is what I'm going to do. And I've been pretty much, as we say here in the South, whole hog, all in on
And
Vistage
that
since.
that kid's no dummy.
Yeah, no, he's not. He's not. He gets it all from me.
There you go. The humility too, I'm sure.
I know. Yes, he's very, very humble.
So, real quick before we talk about your group and a few other things, what was it like for you? Was it a culture shift for you, being coming from an environment where you'd worked about 2 decades for and with somebody that was a mentor and then a peer, and then coming in to a situation where your boss was private equity?
It was a huge culture shock for me, because I truly went from an environment where um, nurturing might be too strong of a word, but it definitely was encouraging. I guess I should say it was more encouraging. Then I went to an organization that really was pretty toxic. And I didn't want to live that way, and I felt strongly that the employees didn't want to live that way, and so I methodically changed that culture. But it was very difficult. There were several days early on when I would drive home, and which if because since you've been in Atlanta, you have a long time to drive home, no
Yes,
matter where you
you
are.
have it 10 miles. It may as well
It
be
doesn't
40.
matter. Yeah.
Yes.
So I would definitely use some of that time to cry and admonish myself that I should have asked better questions in the interview and things of that nature. But you know, I think because I knew what good looked like and great looked like, I knew I could get it there, and I was fortunate enough in my first stint in my first company to have amazing people that surrounded me. And so I sort of one by one put good people in the spots where I needed them, and it worked out really well in the long run.
That's that's very cool, and I'm and I asked the question knowing it was different. I didn't mean to make you tell me about how you used to cry in the car,
That's okay.
but but as a very real thing, culture is one of the most important and underrated things that can contribute to success in any organization. And a Vistage group is really no different. You're when you show up at your meeting and when you show up at your one-to-ones and all of your other chair activities, you are creating and fostering a culture. How and you don't need to tell this story, but you were telling me about somebody before we started talking about a person that was certainly not going to be a culture fit in your
Hmm.
group.
Mm-hmm.
How do you build and maintain that culture in a Vistage group as members come and go, and as you're working with a co-chair? How do you approach creating a winning environment in that setting?
Mm-hmm. Well, first, I'm very fortunate that, I mean, my co-chair and I mean, this is why we decided to co-chair, but we work really well together and we have the same, you know, I think vision for the group, and so that makes it a lot easier because we kind of know at the end of meeting somebody, it's almost like we can just have a look like, no, it's not that person. um, but I think it's interesting as you build a group, and we're only we're about to have our seventh meeting, I guess technically. So it's a newer group, and um, at first I have to admit, it's like, okay, can I get this person in? Like, can I build a group, right? The thing is that people who aren't supposed to be in the group realize it very quickly. And so even before we launched, I had one that I had chosen who stepped out, and that was a good thing. And so, but in terms of, now that we have a group and we have the dynamics and we have a really, again, my humility will show, we have an awesome group. It's probably the best group
Ever.
ever, ever made in the history of Vistage is our group for sure. And so
Only in Vistage, not in the history of peer
in the
groups
history of
in.
peer group, good. Yes.
Sure.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate you
Yeah.
correcting me on that.
Yeah,
You're
it's
right.
like you guys, and then you got the Knights of the Round Table, and
Yes, exactly. Lightning is going to strike me here at any moment. Um, so, but now we have all of these really cool personalities in our group. And what is fun is to see how they all work together because they're not all the same, because you don't want that, right? So I'm not trying to find another person just like somebody I have, because now I think every chair really does this. We want diversity within our group of all sorts, not just color of skin or gender, but how people think, different businesses, are they more direct with their conversation, or, are they more like a sugar coater kind of thing? So
sure,
we want to have the variety. And so we look for that, Bill and I do, in terms of, if we feel like we need somebody who's a little more direct, or if we, and then we're also looking for, I think every Vistage chair would tell you they're looking for more women. Most of them are. We're looking, for certain industries that we don't have, and that's the sort of thing that we do. And then you get to find, fun conversations like the one I told you about earlier.
so how do you approach when you're talking to prospective members? How do you approach the topic of diversity, and how are you organizing your action in order to create that outcome?
Mm-hmm. Well, we do talk with the group about it. So that's some organization of where, I mean, some of it is asking for them to refer from their own network if there's a
Sure.
certain dynamic that they'd like to see in the group. But then I do, and I know Bill does as well, we look through our own networks and we also try to ask for those specifics. Now, of course, we do, you know, I mean, we are still casting a wide net because we are at 10 members right now. So we still are, have a lot of opportunity to fill seats. Um, but there's some areas that we don't really look at all. Like, we have a decent
Right.
amount of construction in our group, that sort of thing.
Now, the thing about having co-chairs, I would consider it sort of an emerging trend in the Vistage business. It's becoming more and more common.
Mm-hmm.
How did you make the decision to go in with a co-chair?
Mm-hmm.
How did you determine that that was the right chemistry for the group, and how do you guys complement each other, and how do you separate the chairing duties to create the best experience for the group, for the best group?
Yeah, that was a lot of questions, Eric.
It's a yeah
Yeah, no, I love it.
it's a hand grenade.
There you go. I love it. So Bill started building his group a little bit before I did. And, again, as we've already acknowledged, it's a long and arduous process. And we were both getting to the point of where it was really time to launch. And for us to come together would make that happen with the amount of people that we had. We talked through it quite a bit. We might be, well, I'm sure others do this, but we were very businesslike in making sure that we had all the I's dotted and T's crossed. And honestly, we probably didn't even need that because it just kind of naturally occurs between Bill and I in terms of who does what, or he has certain gifts that I don't, and we complement each other very well. For the group itself, what I think they get is I have the small business knowledge, and Bill came up through like Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks, and he was chief marketing officer for Scooters out on the West Coast. You might have some there in Colorado,
I don't
Scooters
think we
Coffee.
do.
And so, he has this big company experience that our members value, and they want to see what does a big company do in marketing. What does a big company do? For this, that, or the other, so it's an interesting dynamic that they get from us. And Bill and I are both at, some co-chairs I know will kind of split duties, but we're both at everything. So they definitely get both of us. It helps with issue processing. We sort of take turns. It just sort of naturally happens. It's almost like he gives me a look or I give him a look, and it's time to switch.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
What is the best thing about running your group or co-running your group? What is the thing that makes you most excited about getting out of bed in the morning?
I really think it is. It's kind of like the video that they just showed at Chair World about the difference that it makes for the member. I mean, there, I have been an official Vistage chair for a short period of time, but I can already count many times where I have seen value for my members. In our last meeting, we processed over $20 million worth of issues. That would be the value to the company to solve those issues. But without even the dollar amount, I have seen in one-on-ones or in our group sessions that it is so powerful when somebody gets an idea that they never would have thought of because their brain doesn't work that way and they needed a
Sure.
different perspective. Or, sometimes I find for CEOs, sometimes they just need to hear good job. And
No
because
one
they're
else is going to
so
tell them.
isolated. Yeah, nobody else is telling them that. And so
And the other thing
sometimes,
that The other thing that you hit on, though, that's important is, and sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but the way that you just said, hey, we sat down for an afternoon and processed $20 million worth of issues. The stakes are high,
right? Yeah.
For a lot of these folks when they're coming in and they're trusting you and they're trusting your co-chair and they're trusting the group with whatever they're dealing with. For that person, the stakes are incredibly high.
Absolutely. And that's another thing. I mean, I know you asked me for one thing that I love about being a Vistage Chair, but the saying goes that people come to a Vistage group for the chair, but they stay for the members. And I have been fascinated and thrilled to watch how our members have come together and they start talking to each other outside of the meetings, and they start, just the way the connection works is that you can see that they value each other for the strengths that they have, and they're also there to bolster up each other for the areas where they're a little bit weaker. And it's really incredible to watch. It's a really fun thing to do.
Well, Meredith, I've really enjoyed this. This has been a lot of fun. For folks that want to get in touch with you, if anybody wants to know how to join the best group, if they just need a good route through Atlanta, if they need a good cry, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
That's right. I got you on all those fronts. They can reach me at meredith.jolly@vistagechair.com, or they could go to my website at seriouslyjolly.com.
And that's just seriously jolly, not
seriously
very
jolly.
seriously jolly. Those are
but
different
I am very
websites.
serious sometimes.
Very cool. Thank you so much for being a great guest. I've enjoyed this.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Chairwaves. You can subscribe to our feed using Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your platform of choice. You can also visit chairwaves.com for more information. Chairwaves is hosted and produced by me, Eric Wolf, and to connect with me, you can visit my website at ewolf.live. That's EWOLF.live. And a disclaimer, while I love Vistage and CEO peer groups, this podcast is not owned by or affiliated with Vistage or any other peer organization. Thanks for listening.